Snow hammered the streets that night, thick, blinding, and bitterly cold. Inside a tiny, drafty house on the edge of town, Tanya, a black single mom, wrapped her 8-year-old son's hands in warm socks because they couldn't afford proper gloves. The lights flickered, the heater groaned, and Tanya whispered a quiet prayer that the storm wouldn't shut everything down. Just as she tucked her son into bed, a thunderous roar shook the windows. Engines. Dozens of them. Tanya rushed to the front door, heart racing. When she opened it, her breath caught. 25 bikers, covered in snow, shivering violently, barely able to stand, were huddled on her porch. Their jackets read Hell's Angels. One of them stepped forward, teeth chattering. "Ma'am, we're not here for trouble. Our bikes froze out on the highway. We just need warmth for the night before one of us loses a finger." Tanya glanced back at her son. Then at the icy wind slicing across their faces. She knew what the neighbors would think. She knew how dangerous people said bikers were. But she also knew what freezing to death looked like. "Get inside," she said firmly. "All of you." The bikers stared, shocked. And that stormy night, a tiny house meant for two became a shelter for 25 grown men who had nowhere else to go. They had no idea how much her kindness would change everything. Because by sunrise, 1,500 Hell's Angels would be standing outside her door. The smell of coffee filled the cramped living room as Tanya tried to keep up, refilling mugs, handing out blankets, and opening windows just to let the heat escape. 25 massive bikers sat shoulder to shoulder on her floor, knees practically touching their chests, embarrassed by how little space she had, and how much she was giving. One of them, a tall man with a scar under his eye, kept watching her. He finally spoke softly, "Ma'am, why'd you let us in?" "Most people see our jackets and slam the door." Tanya wiped sweat from her forehead and shrugged. "Because my mama taught me something, you don't leave people outside to freeze." "Enemy or friend?" The scarred biker blinked, stunned. "Nobody's called us people in a long time," he muttered. Her son peeked out from the hallway, clutching a small toy truck. A biker gently knelt so he wasn't towering over the boy. "You can keep your toy safe," he said with a little smile. "We ain't here to steal nothin'. We just needed a roof." The boy nodded slowly and whispered, "Mom says helpers come in all shapes." A few bikers actually looked away, hiding the fact they were getting emotional. Hours passed. The storm only got worse. Wind screamed against the windows hard enough to rattle the furniture. Then suddenly, bang, 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 someone was pounding at the door. The bikers stiffened instantly, hands instinctively dropping toward pockets. Tanya's heart jumped. When she opened the door, it was her neighbor standing there, eyes wide, phone filming. "Tanya, have you lost your mind?" The woman shrieked. "You're letting gang members in your house. Do you know who they are?" In the living room, the bikers lowered their heads, not angry, just ashamed. Tanya stepped onto the porch, blocking the camera with her hand. "They're cold. They needed help. That's all." Her neighbor scoffed. "You think they'll just leave peacefully? You'll be lucky if your house is still standing tomorrow." Tanya's jaw tightened. "You don't know them." The neighbor spat back, "And you do." Before Tanya could answer, the door behind her creaked open. The scarred biker stepped out, towering over both of them, voice calm but heavy. "Ma'am," he said to the neighbor, "she saved our lives tonight. We don't forget things like that." The neighbor stumbled backward, terrified. Tanya didn't know it yet, but that single moment, that tiny act of courage, would ripple far beyond her street. Because those 25 freezing bikers had made one quiet phone call during the night. A call that would bring 1,500 thunderous engines to her doorstep by morning. By dawn, the storm softened into a quiet drizzle, but Tanya barely slept. She was up before sunrise, packing leftover food into small containers for the bikers. Her kitchen looked like chaos, pans everywhere, fridge half empty, but she didn't care. They had thanked her so many times she lost count. When the first biker stepped outside to start his frozen bike, the entire street fell silent. A low rumble, then a louder one, then dozens more. Tanya stepped onto her porch, confused. "Are those your bikes?" she asked. The scarred biker shook his head slowly. "No, ma'am, ours ain't even started yet." The rumble grew into a rolling thunder that shook the neighborhood. Curtains flew open. Doors cracked. People peeked out, terrified. Her son ran onto the porch. "Mom, why is the ground shaking?" Then, they appeared. 1, 10, 100, then hundreds more. Motorcycles, stretching down the road, turning the entire street into a black river of chrome and leather. Hell's Angels. Not 25, not 50, but around 1,500 riders. The sound was deafening. Engines revved in unison like a giant heartbeat. Neighbors came rushing out, phones in hand, whispering, "Why are they here? Oh my God, are we in danger? They're coming for the boy. They're going to attack." Tanya's own legs trembled as she stepped off the porch. The wall of bikers slowly parted, making a path straight to her tiny house. At the front, an older man with a white beard, tattoos up his neck, and a thick leather vest climbed off his bike. He walked toward her with the heavy, serious steps of someone who carried authority. The scarred biker whispered, almost reverently, "That's Redwood Jack, our national president." Tanya swallowed hard, her throat dry. Redwood Jack stopped in front of her. He looked down at her small, snow-soaked porch, at the blankets she had given his men, at her son holding her hand. He took a deep breath. "You're Tanya?" he asked. Her voice barely came out. "Yes, sir." He nodded once, slowly, almost respectfully. "My men told me what you did last night." He turned and looked back at the rows of riders behind him. "They said you opened your home, let them eat, gave them blankets, treated them like human beings." Tanya whispered, "Anyone would have done it." Redwood's eyes hardened. "No, most people slammed their doors. You didn't." He gestured. Two riders stepped forward carrying a large metal case. Redwood spoke again, voice deep. "And in our world, kindness is paid back." Tanya blinked, confused. Then Redwood Jack looked her straight in the eyes and said, "We're here, because a single mom saved 25 of our brothers. And nobody does that without the entire Hell's Angels standing behind her." Her son squeezed her hand tighter. Tanya didn't understand what that meant yet. But in the next moments, she would. Redwood Jack snapped his fingers, and the two bikers set the heavy metal case on Tanya's small porch table. The latch clicked open, and even the cold morning air seemed to pause. Inside, stacks. Not papers. Not tools. Not biker gear. Money. More money than Tanya had seen in her entire life. Neat, tight bundles, fresh bills wrapped clean. Tanya staggered back. I can't take that. I didn't help them for this." Redwood raised a hand gently. "This ain't payment," he said. "This is protection." She blinked. Protection from what? As if answering her question, two police cruisers suddenly turned onto the street. Sirens off. Lights off. But the officers' faces were tense. Too tense for a casual patrol. Neighbors stepped backward immediately, whispering, "Oh no, they finally called the cops on her. She let criminals in. She's done." Redwood didn't move. Neither did the 1,000-plus bikers behind him, standing like a living,